Can you make a video about all of Katherine of Aragon's pregnancies? Yes, I can, but this will be a very sad post. So, between 1509, which is when Katherine of Aragon and Henry VIII married, and 1518, Katherine of Aragon was pregnant at least 6 times. I say at least because these were the pregnancies that were actually recorded. As you may know, Katherine of Aragon and Henry VIII had one child that survived to adulthood, and this would be the future Mary I. She was born in 1516, but what about all the other pregnancies? So following her marriage to Henry VIII in 1509, she became pregnant pretty much straight away, and she gave birth to a baby girl in 1510. Sadly, this was a stillborn child. Incredibly, after this stillbirth, the physicians believed that she might still be pregnant and that she had been carrying twins, because after the stillbirth, her belly did not deflate as they had expected it to. So they believed that there was another baby in there, and they hoped, of course, that this baby was thriving and well. So she was made to continue in her confinement and await the birth of this baby. However, the physicians were sadly completely wrong, and there was no other baby. Her stomach eventually went down, and it is thought that she just had some mild infection after the stillbirth. But it must have been absolutely horrifying to be grieving the death of your first baby, only to be told that maybe you are carrying another one and there's hope, and then to have that hope dashed again and just be wallowing in your grief. And this was, of course, a tragedy. However, miscarriages and stillbirths were very common in these days, and surprisingly, Henry VIII was very comforting of his wife. He really helped her through this sadness and depression over this child loss, and they quickly conceived again, and she went on to have another child, this time a surviving boy. This boy immediately became Duke of Cornwall, as it was an automatic title for the king's heir, and him being the firstborn son, of course, would hopefully become the king's heir. He was named after his father, Henry, and everybody rejoiced and celebrated his birth. Tragically, however, this child did not make it to adulthood and didn't even make it past infancy, as he died just 52 days after his birth. And this was, of course, a huge tragedy to not only his parents, but also the country. Katherine of Aragon then did not conceive for a little while, and it wasn't until 1513, 2 years later, that she became pregnant again, but sadly, this resulted again in the loss of the child. She then became pregnant fairly quickly after that, but sadly again lost the child in 1514. By this point, they were of course getting very anxious that they would perhaps not have a surviving child, and I'm sure Henry VIII was beginning to get quite ticked off, because in those days it was all the woman's fault if they did not have a child, since it was believed that it was quite literally the woman's duty to provide her husband, and in this case the king, with heirs. However, they did go on to conceive again, and this led to a successful pregnancy and a successful birth of Mary, which is of course the only child they would go on to have, and it was a girl, which, as we know, led to everything we know about the Tudor era. Katherine of Aragon would go on to conceive one more time, but sadly this would again end in stillbirth, and this child was a girl. I cover some of this in my book The Forgotten Prince, which focuses on the early years of Katherine of Aragon's marriage with Henry VIII, and the first 2 children that they sadly lost, which is the first daughter, which was a stillborn daughter, and also baby Henry, Duke of Cornwall, who died after 52 days of life. Some of my readers have said that this is their favourite in the Tudor heir series, but of course, warning, there is child loss and it's quite a heavy topic. So if you're brave enough, go for it.